Hey, Cincinnati fans, welcome back to another episode of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. We've got a lot of celebrating to do tonight as Cincinnati takes 6 points, 3 at home against Miami and 3 on the road at RSL, which was a little surprising to some of us with the rotation we saw in the lineup, some of the players we saw on the field that maybe we haven't seen in a while. We got a lot to talk about, and I'll tell you what, we are thankful that even here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk with the technical glitches and everything that we have, sometimes you start a show and you get 2 minutes in and realize, hey, we're not live yet. And your co-hosts just watch and don't say anything until you get in. So we're glad to actually be live a few minutes late tonight. My name's Brian. I'm hosting the show, and it was my fault. And I'm here tonight with Coach and Jose, our regulars here on the show. How you doing, Jose?
Oh, I'm doing good. Don't think of it as that. It was kind of a rehearsal for the live show. What the heck?
And they even talked about the technical issues we had when we started.
I know, yeah.
And it wasn't even live, so nobody knew that. So here we are.
Well, I'm doing great, and as you said, it's always good to be on these shows when you come from a victory. Yes, but especially after that low on Hell is Real, so it really feels good to have 6 points here after 2 games.
Yeah, Hell is Real feels like so long ago at this point. It feels like a different team was on that field that game, and we'll talk about that later tonight as we get into it. Coach, welcome back, man. How you doing? You're just coming back from vacation, right?
Yeah, it was vacation. There's no truth to the fact that I just skipped the pod after the Columbus match because I didn't want to talk about it. No truth to that at all.
I don't think I was on that one either because I was on vacation or at a conference or something, right?
I was on it.
Yeah,
that's where I said, got to be in these, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, well, thanks for taking one for the team, Jose, on that one. We appreciate you for that.
Others that were there too, so we took it for the team.
Yeah, no. Hey, before we get too far into the show, we got to thank our sponsor, Apollo Home. Give Apollo a call. I know it's been hot. It's starting to cool down a little bit here in Fort Wayne. I don't know what it's like there in Cincinnati. Things are cooling off a little bit, but I know the heat is going to stick around for quite some time this summer. We just encourage you to give Apollo a call for all your HVAC needs. Mention you're a CST listener and that Mike said we'd give you a deal, and they'll take care of you. Thanks, Apollo Home, for your support of the show and for taking care of our friends all across the greater Cincinnati area. Hey, let's get into our best and worst. And Coach, I want to start with you here tonight.
Yeah, great. My best by far is the midfield duo. I'm saying duo because, Vander floats around, Dado, or Shano, there's other guys that play at the top of that triangle. But the two guys that are always there, apparently forever and always, never to be substituted or get a rest of any sort, are Pavel Buka and Brian Ta'anunga, who both, at least in the past 2 matches, have been pretty fantastic. I mean, the work rate, the way they're getting back and forth, the number of times that Buka came from behind Messi and poked the ball away from him, like back checking as you're backtracking. The number of times Anunga was getting offensive third touches when he's your midfield destroyer. I just think those two have been so good, at least in the past 2 matches. And I hope that they can get a break, but I also kind of hope that they don't because, they've just been that good and that fun to watch. My worst, I'm just going to say substitutes. All across the board. I don't like the substitution pattern. I don't like the way the subs play when they come in, even when they're the starters who are on the bench coming into a game to replace the subs who started the game to begin with. Like, it seems to me, I don't know if the coach who puts out the cones in the corner and has them do their little jogs, if he's not doing his job. I don't know if subs are not being mentally prepared or mentally preparing themselves, but too often guys come into the game and the level of play drops when really your main job there is to increase the level of play, whether it's increase the energy, increase the technical ability, increase the tactical acumen because the coach has given you something to change. You're supposed to add something, and too often these substitutes just aren't cutting it.
The last one I remember coming in and really doing that job was Alvis Powell about 3 games ago. And we've even talked about it, right? Coming in as a starter now, not even playing to the level that he was playing as a sub. So yeah, good call there. It is interesting to watch the sub patterns and we've talked about it plenty on the show here. Sometimes they feel a little late. Sometimes they feel like, are we really replacing a forward with our defender at this moment in the game? It seems a little off. Yeah, good call there, Coach Jose. Best and worst.
Well, I have to say the strong teamwork against Miami. I mean, it was a completely different team from what we saw in Hell is Real. 6 points also after that meltdown, which I think does talk a lot about resilience and mental fortitude, which you guys have heard me harp on here. Hey, this team does not have the mentality, does not have the physicality. I mean, this is not a championship level team. Well, on Wednesday, they shut me up. And I'm happy they did. So I think that's the best I can say. A very strong team in the Miami game came away with 6 points, despite the strong rotation with Real Sal Lake and playing at a high altitude, quick turnaround, long flight. So kudos to them. But I also want to mention Anunga. I mean, Coach mentioned Anunga and Book. I mean, he's a guy that is stepping up. I mean, when Obi went down, we thought, oh no, what are we going to do? I mean, Obi's not there. And he's not Obi, but he has really stepped up. And I hope he continues to step up because he's got a long way to go. My worst is one word: Baird. He doesn't fit. And
Enough said. Enough said. You don't even need to go on.
We'll talk more about it. That's it.
Oh man, that's a good one. Let me throw a couple here from the chat here. Rupesh says his best is Buka and Anunga. Just echoes Coach's midfield duo there. Worst, if he has to pick one, he says offensive ineptitude in Salt Lake. And then Jeff Tebbets chiming in from Boston. Defense is steadfast without having to rush Hagelin back too quickly. We do like that, although it's been good to see Hagelin on the bench and knowing that he's getting ready, getting prepared. Worst, the offense could be toothless without Denke. And I would actually, my best tonight, Jeff, I would counter that a little bit to say we scored 4 goals without Denke on the field in these last 2 games. Now, Salt Lake was a different story than Miami because of the personnel that we had on the field. See Jose's comment just a moment ago, his one word worst. I think that's part of it, but this team seems to be getting a little bit more creative. And so my best is actually 4 goals that they put in the back of the net without Denke on the field against a team like Miami, which we know they're not the best defensively, but 3 goals and shutting them out and their attacking side of the field, man, was pretty great. My worst is just, it's our depth right now with the injuries that we have. You mentioned it, Coach, and your best with Anunga and Buka playing constantly, not having not getting a chance to get a rest. Who is going to come in for them? Like, who is going to be the guy that's going to step in unless you're dropping Evander back or you're bringing Dotto in late and, pushing with 2 10s and one, an 8 or a 6 in the back. Like, there's nobody here that's healthy that can give them a break right now. And so that, I think that's going to show some tired legs maybe later on in the season as we go. And if we can't get Obi back quick enough or Kubo back, I don't know what the story is with Kubo yet. Until we get some of those guys in, it's going to be a struggle. So my worst is just the depth right now. And I've harped on it a couple times that we've got 2 goalkeepers sitting on the bench so many times because we just don't have guys to fill it. We've got some young guys sitting there that we know probably aren't going to get much time unless there's an injury late in the game. But I'd like to see some rotation and get some more guys back in there and hopefully get some of these guys healthy as we go. So Rupesh asks, who's backing up Anunga now? Is it Jimenez? And I don't know. Was Jimenez on the bench this last week in RSL?
I don't know.
I don't think he was.
I'm not sure. He was out there recently, I think. Was it maybe the Miami game he was on the bench? I don't know. Yeah, Rupesh, good question. Like, I don't know who that is going to be that's backing him up. But we're going to get into some of the more specifics of the game, and we're going to do things a little bit differently later in the show with our Talking Tactics segment because we're sandwiched between 2 Miami games. Right? We played Miami this last week. RSL was kind of in the middle there, and we've got Miami coming up later. And so for our Talking Tactics segment later in the show, we're going to talk about some of the tactics we've seen Coach Noonan and FCC employ against teams like Miami and Columbus and RSL here recently. And then with a quick turnaround with Miami coming up this next weekend, what can we expect to see? What worked? What didn't work? How did people break the press that Cincinnati seemed to be pushing high. How did they not break the press? What's going to work? What's not going to work? So if you have questions for Coach or us about the tactics that we've seen recently and maybe how those can shift and change and what might work this weekend in Miami, drop those in the chat and we'll be sure to get to those later on in the show. But we want to talk about this Miami beatdown first. This is 2 years in a row Miami has come to town, and we've dropped in those 2 games 9 goals on Miami and only given up 1. That's something to celebrate. Like, if there's nothing else in the season, that's something to celebrate, is the fact that we've put 9 goals in the back of the net against Miami and kept Messi, that's his name, out of the net completely. The guy's not scored on Cincinnati. He's one of 5 teams that he's not scored against in the run of play in MLS League play, which is pretty incredible. So let's get into this Miami game a little bit. Danke's out, right? We see Dado get a start. Go Dado. And he gets in the box. He scores early. Young kid, off to a good start against Miami. We got Evander with the brace in there. And again, this defensive team, this team that we have along the back line, kept Miami out of the back of the net. Jose, as you were watching that Miami game, knowing what happened in Hell is Real just before that, the epic collapse from up 2 goals to losing 4-2, Miami's coming to town. What's going on in your head leading into that game?
I mean, and you guys heard me say this on Monday, I think, of last. God, it seems like forever. Monday of last week, I said, I just don't think we're going to be able to survive because this team showed such a huge meltdown against our arch rival that how do you recover from that? And I was also going off of other performances where they just didn't seem to step up against lower level, with all due respect to the other teams, lower level rivals. So I went in with the expectation, okay, we're going to lose this one. And that midfield of Miami, and I said this last Monday, they're going to run over us because they're very dynamic. First few minutes, I thought, okay, both teams are kind of, seeing where is this, because they're both tired. It's hot. Okay, where's this going? But then as the game progressed, I just saw something different about FCC on the pitch. More hustle, which was missing against Columbus. More communication. I saw the players talking to each other. They were closing down lanes, blocking passes in the back line big time. The midfield was disrupting their midfield. And so about 15 minutes into the game, says, okay, this is a different team now. Man, can they keep it up? Obviously, we know the results. So what I saw as the game evolved was a very different team. Again, a lot of hustle, communication. All the lines were working well together. Everybody was stepping up. I mean, without Denke, I was concerned. But Dado was really wreaking havoc in that back line. He was sometimes do his Dado thing, right? Started doing, then he'd leave the ball behind or trip or whatever. But okay, he's a young guy. He will learn. So personally, again, as I said at the beginning of the show, I am so glad I was proven wrong. I mean, this was a very different team that showed up against Miami than played against the Crew.
It felt a little bit, Coach, to me like, Miami's got some older players on the team, fantastic players, great players. But it felt a little bit like Noonan took the ball and rolled it out and said, you guys are faster, you're younger, go get them. Yeah. We saw what happened last year. Did it have that feel to you at all?
Yeah, there was lots of talk, I guess, in during the match and pre-match that the Noonan had a meeting with the players at training and talked to them about their individual play and how it really cost them. And I don't know what else happened. By all accounts, this team is really tightly knit. And absolutely, I would bet when we watch whatever documentary MLS puts out next year covering this season and they're talking about this match and they show the locker room what happens, I bet those players are fired up because they came out immediately. And to be fair, they did that against the Crew too. Immediately they came out and they got on the front foot and they went. Right. The difference is in this match, when Miami started to have long spells of possession, instead of chasing the ball and like running around thinking, oh my gosh, we have to have it back, and getting then cut up by the players that can dribble through that press or pass through that press, against Miami, the players continued that work rate, but not just trying to get the ball at all costs. It was very intentional. It was constantly checking your shoulder, making sure that you're cutting off passing lanes into Messi, making sure that you're, as a center back, getting sideways on and not letting Allende they run in behind you, those sorts of things that Miami, does to other teams. And it's just like the mental, I guess is what I'm getting at, the mental effort to stay tuned in on that stuff was every bit as impressive as the physical effort to actually do the things.
Yeah. I wonder how much, maybe this is a question for later, Coach. So if you want to wait till we get to talking tactics to hit on this one, the way Cincinnati has shut down Messi, I don't know that there's one way that they've done it, but it almost felt like in this game particularly that they just played him like any other player. Like it was like not a lack of respect for who he is, but they weren't, like he was getting ball in space and they were just letting him play. And Buka, as you mentioned earlier, coming in from behind, stealing the ball, Anunga fronting him, like getting in front of him and not letting him get places. Like it just seemed like they played him like you're just another guy on the field and we're going to do it like we do it to anybody else. Is that maybe that's
yes and no.
Later, maybe?
No, I think we can touch on that now. I think it's a bit of both. I definitely noticed that they didn't do anything specific to key on Messi, like man mark him, anything like that. But they were definitely aware of where he was and where he was picking up the ball. The play that stands out to me was when Messi was driving at Lucas Engel at the top of the 18, and Lucas Engel dropped off on the runner. And I'm thinking, what are you doing, right? You don't drop off of Messi on any runner. You take, Allende from 4 yards out. You take that shot rather than Messi from 20 every day, right? The XG factoring in the player, you take the Allende. But that showed a trust that if he dropped off on that pass, Messi was going to have to turn the ball back onto his left foot. And who was there? Matt Miazga. Right. And so it was not only being like, we're not going to just so key on Messi that then he can just pass the ball to somebody who's wide open. That's the treating him like every other player. But there was also that awareness of like, I know our game plan and I trust if I do that, if I drop off of Messi and don't worry about him being in that space, somebody else is going to step to him. So it's like a knowing your role and knowing your responsibility and trusting your teammate in that regard.
Yeah. Well, and I think you also touched on it a little bit, Brian. They are older players. So at some point, they looked tired. Suarez was incredibly frustrated towards the end of the game because he couldn't do anything, but he was slow. He was just not the Suarez that we know. So I think part of it also is what Coach is saying, but part of it is also, as you said, Nunes, okay, you guys are younger. You can outrun these guys. Yeah, okay, they're very good players. We got to respect them, but we can physically be superior to them in this game if we just stick to our game plan, run after them or wait for them, and be a little physical too, because I saw Cincinnati supposed to be a little bit more physical than usual with some of the Miami players.
Yeah. I honestly forgot Suarez was on the field for long stretches of that game. He just was not getting the ball. And maybe it was Cincinnati's press. Maybe it was just Cincinnati just keying in on other players. But Suarez, I just forgot he was out there. And we shift to the other end of the field with Evander getting a brace in this game. He did one sort of on his own. It was a fortuitous bounce that comes to him, around a couple of players. And then the follow-up off of Orshano's shot that keeper parried away, and he runs in and he puts in. The thing that impresses me more and more about Evander is just his balance. And we've talked about Kubo and his balance to receive a ball, back to goal, turn and go. His balance is off the charts. But Evander just always seems, for a taller player, seemingly a taller player than our last year's number 10, who had great balance, but he was closer to the ground. Evander just always seems upright. And his feet are doing the work. His body's always over his center of gravity. And I think that's what led to those 2 goals. Like, he wasn't allowing himself to get knocked off the ball. And then when the ball came off keeper's hands and he's running in off of Oreshano's shot, he was just calm, cool, and collected. He wasn't making a dive for that ball. He was just there and he was ready, twisted his hips, put his, inside of his right boot on the ball and put it in. I'm really impressed with the way that he stays upright in these games and gets himself into position that led to those 2 goals.
Yeah, Brian, you said calm, cool, and collected, and that hits the nail on the head for me with Evander. Sometimes it even makes it look like nonchalant or like he's not working out there. But how many players, when that ball takes that slight deflection on the first goal, how many players kind of panic and kind of try to grab the ball, like reach out and try to get it, as opposed to letting it come to them? And then there's a heavy touch. That's right now, that's Corey Baird. One of his main problems is everything he does, it's like, oh my gosh, the ball, and then he boots it, or he decides not to touch it and it rolls to a defender because like, if I touch it, I'm going to boot it. So, whereas Evander, everything seems a half a step or a full step slower for him. Rupesh made a comment about Dado's run to clear space for Evander. In some ways, he didn't really clear space. The ball was like coming right through traffic. I mean, he did, but it's like only space that Evander could use, because if that was any other player, what Dado did was clog that space. But Evander slows down. And when that ball comes in, it's almost like he's like, if I get it, I'm going to kind of do this with it and score. And if not, no big deal. I'll get it next time. And that chill that he has, the second goal, the way he just kind of like hangs out, and as the shot comes in, he just kind of ghosts in. It's literally like he's just at the park, just like hanging out and be like, I might score here and I might not, which I think is a really, really good quality. At times it's frustrating
but
too,
it's
right?
The same thing that frustrated us at the beginning of the season, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It looks at times like he's like so nonchalant. He's not working hard out there. And that goes into some of his like long range shots and stuff when you're like, man, come on. Like, that's not the time. But like, he's out there just kind of playing. And I think that it's like, you got to let Lucho be Lucho last year, where he's going to try to dribble 10 guys sometimes. You got to let Evander be Evander. And that's what is great. That's his greatness. And you can't take that away from him.
Yeah, I'm going to say something that actually got me into a huge amount of trouble with some friends on online chat. Not on CST. I said, in ways, Evander's an upgrade over Acosta. Acosta was magical. I mean, the guy could make something out of nothing. But there's something about Evander. I think he's a more complete player. He will never have Acosta's dribbling skills or ability, go through 3 or 4 players and score this magical goal. I don't think that's him. But he brings other qualities that's what I'm saying, that's what I told my friends, that I think he's an upgrade. I got a world of grief from them. I was like, well, guys, it's it's my opinion. But I think what you guys have said kind of backs that up. I mean, he's a guy that's kind of there, kind of seems to float around, doesn't seem to make an effort, and then boom, things happen.
Yeah. Well, 2 names we have not mentioned yet that I think are worth mentioning, especially because of the Miami game, was Roman Celentano. I think played an incredible game, keeping Messi out of the net. The few shots that he did get looks at goal, none of them, credit to our defense, none of them were, corners, balls to the side, except the one that Celentano was quick to react to, right? He made the saves he needed to make and wasn't rattled playing against a player of Messi's quality. And I love to see that in our goalkeeper holding his line that way. And Kai Kamara, I think, is a name that he's not scored yet. But with him on the field, Cincinnati seems to be putting more balls in the net, or they're attacking a little bit more. We've talked about him a little bit on previous shows, but he seems to be the X factor to me to unlocking this offense. And he's not scored a goal yet. He's just the threat. He's comfortable holding the ball. He makes the right runs. He dishes the ball when other players make the right runs. I think he's a 40-year-old player that knows what he's capable of, and he plays within his strengths and doesn't try to do too much. Coach, what are you seeing out of Kai Kamara right now? Am I right on or am I off base? Is he the guy that's unlocking this front 3?
I don't know if I would call him the guy, because, there's a Brazilian number 10 we were just talking about. So it's like, but I guess if you're saying like who is unlocking that Brazilian number 10, right. I could make that argument for Kai, because, I always knew he was a good goal scorer. Like, that just from being a fan of the league, but now watching him game in and game out, the little things that he does so well, it's not just that he holds the ball up when he gets on it. It's the movement that he has to put that defender on his hip so that he can hold the ball up. It's where he's checking back to the ball. It's the speed, the little burst of speed that he shows, but then he knows he's not straight line fast. So the way he uses his body after he uses the acceleration to get that half or a quarter step on the defender, those little things are so valuable for this team. He changes the field tilt. He takes an FC Cincinnati that's struggling to get out of their defensive third and puts them into their attacking third. And so does that allow guys like Orshano or Buka getting into the attack, or Evander, does that allow those guys to do more work? I think 100% it does.
Yeah.
You know,
and he
we saw
and he came close to scoring, by the way, against the Miami game. Remember, he dribbled, and I'm thinking, what's he doing? He just kept dribbling and dribbling, and he got that shot that was going in. I mean, the goalie just punched it up, but that was going in. Says, well, that's a different guy that I've seen before.
Yeah. No, I think again, I think he plays to his strengths. I think the league knows what he brings. Like, players know who Kai Kamara is, know what he brings, and play him a little differently. Now, the thing I was going to suggest is we thought he was coming in to be a depth piece up top, and I know Denke's injured, but Kai's been starting more games than he's not been. And I think that's pretty important to keep our eye on, right? Is it when Denke comes back, is it going to be Kai? Is it going to be Dado? Is it going to be someone else in those front three?
Do you think it's because maybe something is still going on between Noonan and Dado? Because, every time they ask about Dado, it's almost like, yes, but. There's always a but with him. He doesn't say the word but there's always a yes, but. I mean, what do you guys think about that?
I don't think. Go ahead, Coach.
I don't think there's something going on with Dado and Noonan. I think Pat Noonan is like, he likes to keep kids in their place. Like, don't get too big for your britches. And I think so he's constantly doing that thing that a lot of coaches do, where he's like, yeah, he's doing pretty well, but he could still get better. Right. And I think that's Pat Noonan's MO. And I think especially as a former forward himself, like, I think he sees those things. We talked about the ball getting stuck under Dado's feet and some of that. And he's just trying to say, like, this kid's not ready to be an MLS superstar, not yet. And he's right. Noonan is right.
Right.
Yeah. Dado has been a good, useful player. He is not ready to be a superstar. And right now, Dado shows flashes. But even if his flashes are a lot better than Kai Kamara's flashes at the moment, Kai Kamara, just minute to minute, all of the things he's doing for your team, I think is necessary. So I think to your point, I think that the thing going on between Noonan and Dado is real, and that it's Pat Noonan and the way he thinks about young players in general.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think long term, though, I would question. We'll see how it goes. It's been a short little bit with Noonan and Dado, like even just a couple seasons. But is it hindering the development of a young player, not giving him the time that like he could play and he could learn from? But obviously, we don't see what he sees every day in, day out at training, so we can't question too much of that. I just think it was worth mentioning Kai and Dado and what we see coming up. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about this RSL game. There was a lot of talk of who are we going to see, right? Are we going to see some rotation? Do they need the rotation? There's a lot of travel involved. There's some altitude involved. We're going to a Western Conference opponent. It's a game that, in the long run, like, is not as important. And we weren't sure what we were going to see out there in RSL led by Diego Luna, right? We did end up seeing some rotation in the lineup. We saw the one word Jose uttered earlier, Baird, starting up top for FC Cincinnati with, who was he up there with? He was up.
Was it Dado?
He was he up there with Dado? Kai. He was up there with Kai, right?
Okay. No, Kai didn't start. It was Dado.
Oh, that's right. It was Dado. Yeah, Dado. Yeah.
All right, man. This feels like so long ago. I've had so much in my brain talking about Miami and Columbus, right? So Baird gets a start in for Kamara. That's right. He's in for Kamara. Flores plays over Miazga. Miazga gets a rest to start this game. Powell goes in for Yedlin to start on that right side flank there. Seeing the lineup, I wasn't super confident, right? RSL's been kind of up and down this season, but seeing the lineup that we had on their home turf, after some travel, I know the guys needed some breaks, but I was not super confident in this game. Jose, starting with you, what would you? I know that again there was a lot of back and forth, even with our team, like our CST team. Why are they doing that? Do the guys need rest? No, they don't need rest. Where were you at in this whole debate?
Well, when I saw the lineup, there really isn't much of a choice. I mean, you had tired legs. Again, intense game with Columbus, intense games with Miami, long flight, high altitude, tired legs. You have to rotate. And the problem is we don't have guys like Yuya or Nick available. So the pickings are slim. I mean, you don't have much to go to. The bench is really thin, as you guys have said. So when I saw the lineup and with Barrett up front, I said, oh boy, but what can we do? I mean, in fact, I got to tell you, when my wife saw the lineup, she goes, Baird? Even my wife is saying, because she used to like support this guy. Okay, one of these days he's going to bring them. One of the, and I said, I'm done with him. That's it. That's over.
She used to support this guy. That's
Yeah,
the line of the episode. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my take. I don't think there was much that Noonan could do given the personnel available.
Yeah. Coach, your thoughts on rotating players, Western Conference game, travel, altitude. Was it a necessary thing? In the long run, it worked out, but was it a necessary thing?
I think it was 100% necessary. First of all, let's get things straight that Noonan made 4 changes in terms of rotating players. That's not ridiculous, right? It seems ridiculous because Corey Baird's starting and all of us kind of think that should never happen. But even within those 4 changes, like a couple guys that he brought in, Teenage, for instance, you could argue are starters or at least potential starters or have been starters on this team. And then he shifted some positions, right? Like Engel went from left center back to left wing back. So that wasn't a change in personnel. But if you don't rotate, you end up in a situation where you're in, I don't know, maybe like an Eastern Conference final. Maybe you're at home, maybe you're not. Maybe you're at the end of the game and a team has come back against you and you're struggling and all your guys are cramping and laying on the floor. I mean, not that any of us have trauma about that, but there's this idea, right? There's this idea that like, oh, these are professional athletes. They should be, they're professional athletes who have bodies that are finite, that are out there running 8 and 10 miles a game and getting kicked while they're doing it and playing through pain and playing through rolled ankles and bruises. And so absolutely having a day off for your body to recover makes a big deal. A guy like Matt Miazga, I feel like last year or 2 years ago, never would have gotten this day off, right? Because he's like that defensive stalwart, that's captain. But Noonan trusted Flores and Robinson to anchor the middle there and Teenage. And I think that it paid off. And you know what? If it didn't, if FCC goes and loses that game away, Western Conference opponent with after 3 games in 8 days, I think even as a fan, I'm like, I take that if it means that we're healthier down the stretch. You can't in one way say, man, we have all these pulled muscles and hamstrings and like, what is this staff doing? What is going wrong with this team? And on the other hand, be like, we should never rotate players. These guys are professionals. Play them day in and day out. Like, that's cognitive dissonance that I cannot abide.
Yeah. There's one thing, like there's the attitude of a coach and a player that says like, when I step on the field, I believe I'm going to win every game, right? And if there was ever a game that as a fan, I thought, okay, this is a lineup that coach isn't going out to lose the game, but he's like, okay, if this is a game we're going to lose, that's fine. We'll rest our guys. That's what it felt like. This lineup felt like to me. But to your point, Coach, most of these players, sub Corey Baird, have been starters on this team at times regularly, even this season. I do think it speaks to the chemistry that we're seeing across our back line. That was we had players beginning of the season. Matt was coming back. Hagelin was coming back. And we saw a back line that was a little leakier than we've seen it in the past. And we were a little unsure about it. We've mentioned this a couple times in this episode already. The way guys are checking their shoulders, they're trusting the guy next to them. They didn't need a Matt Miazga out there the full 90 minutes to control that back line. They've got leadership back there now. Some of that is, an angle that we talked about earlier, just getting super fired up in these last couple games. I think he's stepping up, owning his place on this team and feeling a little bit more like a leader back there. I love seeing that passion from our guys out there, but I do like seeing the back line that, again, we can rotate players in and out. Maybe not every game we want to see that, but for a one-off game like this, to sub in some guys that haven't seen the starting position for a while and to trust that they know what they're doing and they trust the guy next to them. It was a confidence booster for me as a fan to see that. So I did like seeing that. As we shift to the other end of the pitch, right? The offensive third, or, almost the offensive third, we're seeing guys taking shots more consistently before we get to that attacking third from distance, right? It happened in Miami. It happened in Cincinnati against Miami. It happened at RSL. It's been happening. It seems like the frequency of these long range shots is picking up. What is that? A lack of trust in teammates? Is that a lack of creativity? Like, we're just not getting through this back line, so I'm just going to shoot it from here and see what happens. Is it a selfish thing, a selfish mentality on a player's part, or is it a players just feeling like, I'm confident I can do this? Why are we seeing that so much? I know Noonan's even talked about it. Why does it keep happening, Jose?
We can speculate all kinds of things. I mean, maybe there is a little bit of selfishness. I mean, we saw in the Miami game a couple of times, and I forget who the players were, that they had players doing the run or players waiting in the box, and instead of just trying to make a play there, they shot to the moon on top of that. I mean, it wasn't even close. I mean, if it were to be on frame, okay, maybe something can happen. You shoot on frame, there could be a rebound. I mean, something could happen, but it wasn't even close. He was out. So we lost the ball. So maybe there's a lack of trust. I mean, it could be all those things you mentioned. There's a little selfishness, a lack of trust. Obviously, if Baird is there, and I'm sorry to pick on him, I mean, it's going to be really hard to trust him. I mean, I'm being brutal, but it's true. So I don't know. And you're right. Noonan has talked about this, about the lack of decision, or bad decision making, as you call it, in these long shots. So is it also a coaching issue? Is the message not getting through enough? Now, again, I've never been a coach, but as coach says, you don't want to tell the players, here's a solution. You got to give them the liberty to solve the problem on the pitch. That's their job. At the same time, I'm questioning, but how much of that is also saying, look, this is how we want to play. Now, 1 or 2 shots a game, okay, but if I see it more and more, then what is going on? So again, a lot of speculation on my part, because I really can't put my finger as to why are they doing this. And you're right, it seems to be happening more and more.
I'm going to jump in because I want to give Coach the final word on this to set us both straight. I don't know what's going on in his head, but here's what it looks like to me. I coach high school soccer, right? And so I look through this lens. I shouldn't, but I see this lens, right, of a player that goes out and a little overconfident, striking a ball. Things aren't working well in the offensive third, striking a ball from 40 yards because somebody's got to do it, right? Somebody's got to shoot. Somebody's got to win this game. Somebody's got to whatever. Yeah. And that player takes a shot and it doesn't go. And his teammates are frustrated with him. Now, the next time down, that other midfielder, that other striker gets the ball and says, well, you didn't pass it to me last time. I'm going to take the shot this time. It feels a little bit like juvenile to me, and I don't think that's it. I don't think that's the case. But as I watch, maybe it is. They're young players, but they're professionals. But as I watch that, it looks like, the times that it happens, sometimes there are not runners, right? There's nobody getting forward. I'm going to take the shot because I've got space right now. In the last couple of games, Cincinnati has had runners down the wings. They've had runners coming into the box, and runners that have been visibly and verbally frustrated that the ball didn't come through to them because the other player took the shot. That's why I feel like it looks a little juvenile. I don't think that's the case. Coach, set me straight on this one. What are you seeing and why is it happening?
I think that you are all right is the problem. So the thing about it is but you're all right just by nature, because anytime you shoot from distance when there's a pass ahead of you, it is a little bit selfish, right? Because you shot when you could have passed. Also, it lacks a little bit of trust. You think even if you make that pass, that guy is not going to have as good an opportunity, whether by passing or shooting, as you have in that moment. So those things are real and true, and I think across the board they are. Now, from a coaching perspective, Jose, mentioned, like, you don't want to solve problems for the players. You want to let them solve themselves. So I want to use Corey Baird as an example here, because in the RSL game, there was a moment when he was dribbling in kind of a 2v2 break and Evander was ahead of him. And what he needed to do in that moment is cut that ball back onto his right foot and have a shot. And you force the keeper there into a save. Maybe Evander goes in, maybe he gets the rebound, maybe you score. But instead, Corey Bear didn't have that confidence, didn't have that selfishness, thought certainly Evander can do something better than I can. So he dribbled it right towards Evander and then passed it to him. Everybody knew in the world that was happening, and the chance was completely dead. Right. And then in another moment, he comes in on his right foot and there is a runners ahead of him and he's from about 24, 25. So we're not talking 40 yards here, but he hits a shot through traffic when he could have passed it out wide to, I think at that point it was Alvis Powell getting in at the corner of the box. So it's like struggling with that decision making. And as a coach, if you tell players, I don't want you to shoot from distance when there's better options available ahead of you. Now what you're doing is you're putting that doubt in the player's mind. Right? Like, well, is that a better option? Should I be passing to that player? Right? Evander, there was a game against, I think it was Orlando, where he hit a wicked shot from like 40 yards and like popped Gayese's finger out of socket because it hit it so hard. Right? And the guy wasn't the same for the rest of the match. So you hit shots like that. And as a coach, you don't want to tell that guy who's a creative player who plays the game in a way where he just feels it like, hey, I don't want you doing that anymore. Right? Same with Orishana. You see him hit these bangers and you don't want to take that away from him. So I think Noonan probably leans into like, come on, guys, let's make better decisions. But you decide what those decisions are. Right? And I think that's right. Now, I will say to your points, both of your points, I think Noonan has gone too far in that direction. I do think that there needs to be, if it's not happening, some film sessions where you sit down and you show like 5 of these long shots in a game that had very clearly better options like ahead of them. Like you hit this shot. Look at even by your stats, Evander or Ashano, you're only going to hit 1 out of 20 of these. Right, are going to go in, or 1 out of 40, whatever it is. Look at these other players. You need to be a great player to be a great team. You have to bring them into the match with you. Pass the ball, run off of them. I want you to be frustrated when you don't get the ball back, but I want you to give the ball up and make that run anyway over and over and over again, because that's what good teams do. And I'm not sure if either Noonan and the staff is not doing that, or if the players aren't getting the message, but something needs to change. Because having that many shots from distance, I think the stat at halftime was they had 11 shots, I think, or it was 8 shots. They had 8 shots and 5 of them were from outside of the 18. Wow. It's like, that's not a good ratio. Like you're taking low percentage shots, low percentage chances, even by the standards of Evander or Ashado. So I do think that needs to change for FC Cincinnati's offense to really hit elite levels.
Mm-hmm. I do think even the player that takes the shot, there are moments where they've got probably 2 or 3 more dribbles of space ahead of them before they shoot it. And so it's not even a matter of, do I dish the ball or shoot it now? It's, I could take two or 3 more dribbles, or I'm just going to shoot it from here, right? Something you said, Coach, reminded me of things like when I was playing, I remember a coach saying, if a guy's going to stand in front of you, run him over. They'll think twice about doing it again, right? Evander hitting from 40 yards, breaking a guy's finger, like he'll think twice instead of saving my ball the next time, right? It's what little bit of what it feels like. Talk about juvenile here, right? One player I do want to talk about a little bit more is Luca Orishano. Before we get into that conversation, I do want to remind you we're going to shift into our Talking Tactics segment here in just a moment. If you've got questions, we've kind of set this up. If you weren't with us at the beginning of the show, we've kind of set up our Talking Tactics tonight to be about questions. The tactics we've seen in recent games that Cincinnati's employed against teams like Columbus and Miami and RSL, and especially with Miami coming up again in just this weekend, right? So 2 games sandwiched around the RSL game. What are we going to see differently? What worked against Miami last time? Will we see the same sorts of tactics, that sort of thing? If you have questions for us, specifically for Coach on Cincinnati's tactics previously, what we can look forward to in Miami, drop those in the chat and we'll get to those. I do want to talk for a minute about Luca Orishano. It seems that the guy has tried hard all year long, right? He's come in, he's changed positions, right? He's more on the left side now, started on the right side this year. We've talked all season about the way he dribbles players. He tries to cut in. Teams are putting 2 and 3 guys on his left foot, so he can't get that shot off. He shifts over to the left. What is it going to take? And he's starting to score. right? It's not every game, and that's okay. No player scores every game unless you're Messi or maybe Evander. What is it going to take to unlock this guy this season? He's going to be a key player, I think, down the stretch as Cincinnati goes for the Shield, goes for the playoffs, goes for the MLS Cup. What's it going to take to unlock this kid to play maybe the way we saw him play last season?
I think what you need to do is you need to convince him that being a secondary chance creator is a fantastic role for him. You know, playing over there on the left side when he's dribbling in on his right foot, his role is going to be looking for those little curling or cutback passes like he fed Dado with that assist. If he gets out on his left foot, his role should be rounding that corner and looking for cutbacks or little clipped crosses. So secondary chance creator is really what he is. And then from there you say, and as you're doing the secondary chance creating, I'm giving you the liberty to make these central runs, you know, to every once in a while pass that ball to Dado and then curl into the box yourself. Pass that ball out wide to Evander, who has come over there to combine with you and make the run up the middle. Because we've seen Dado have, or we've seen Orishano have success there too. But he can't do that every time. He's got to embrace that role as being a secondary chance creator instead of a goal scorer.
Yeah. I was looking up some statistics here just before the show started tonight, and here's my take on Luca Orishano, and then Jose, I want to kick it to you and get your take on this guy. Last year he comes in right, knowing this is Lucho Acosta's team. He knew his role, he knew his place. Lucho was the guy, and he played well with Lucho. He came in knowing he's not the primary chance creator; he's the secondary chance creator. I think as a young player at the start of the season, he came in trying to assert himself a little bit more. Like, it's open. We know Evander might be the guy. We know Kevin Denke might be the guy, but I'm the guy that's been here. And I know what I can do. I know what I'm capable of. So what I saw in Orishano early on was a guy trying to assert himself and not having the combination of players around him like he did last year in Lucho Acosta to make that happen. And so he was putting a lot on his own back and his own shoulders. The stats I was looking up this year that seemed to indicate he's finding his role a little bit more on this team is I'm looking up his assists. He's got 6 assists on the season. He's got 2 goals on the season. We all know his 2 goals have come recently. So I started looking, when did his assists start coming? Because I don't remember many at the beginning of the season, right? His first assist was April 26th, the fantastic bicycle kick, Kevin Denke's goal. That was his first assist, Luca Orishano's first assist of the season. His second assist came a month later on May 29th to Pavel Buka against FC Dallas, of all places, right? Of all people, Lucho Acosta playing against him. And then he starts getting assists June 14th, June 25th, July 16th. They seem to start coming. And it seems to be that this kid is finding his spot on this team as an assist man, which to me seems to not only indicate that he's finding his place, but it's opening up space for him because he's finding players running. They're not shutting down his left foot because he's finding guys before he gets trapped in that space, finding guys to make the pass, and is opening up maybe even just a half step of space that he needs to get the shots off that he's looking for. Coach, you seem to indicate earlier that may be because his position has shifted. He's playing on the left side now and not the right. Jose, I want to get your take on Luca Orishano and what you're seeing out of him, what it's going to take to unlock him. And then, Coach, if you want to jump back in there, feel free.
You know, one of the things we talked at the beginning of the season is how well the big three, Evander, Denke, and Orellano, how well they were going to fit in and how long it would take them to create that chemistry and that teamwork that's going to be required at the front. And I think part of the problem has been exactly what you're saying, that he wanted to assert himself. Was Denke going to be the guy? Was Evander going to be the guy? So, well, I'm here. So, I'm going to be aggressive and assertive about this.
And I'll say, I want you to continue, but I don't blame him for that.
No, absolutely not. No. I mean, I'm in his place. I do exactly the same thing. I mean, I've worked in many corporations, and sometimes a new guy would come in. Well, wait a minute, we don't know if this guy's going to perform. I mean, I've been here before, so I get it. No, it's not. I'm not blaming him. It's just I think it's a normal human reaction of being in an organization where you had a huge impact, like you did last year. Now here come 2 guys that you don't know them. Period. Maybe you played against Evander. I don't know if he was there when he played against Portland. I know played Portland last year. So yeah, you have a guy that he wants to make his mark. Now let's also remember he was injured at the beginning of the year. So there were some issues there in the beginning of him not being able to perform. And I think what we're seeing now is maybe that chemistry, I know I harp on this a lot, is finally building. And his confidence is growing. And maybe he's also not accepting the role. Okay, I'm not the guy, but I am a guy. I'm one of the big three here. And if I continue to play my role, we could really continue to unlock this offense, which is starting to show glimpses of, hey, we could score if we want to, if everybody's healthy, if everybody's playing the simple game, like I'd say, if everybody making the right decisions. So I think it's starting to sink in that that's his role, that he's got two other really good players, even if Denke is not there right now because of injuries. And it may be starting to click finally, all the big threes, although right now we have Kai and Dado. So, that's kind of my take on it. He's a very talented player and he's young. So, it was probably a little bit of a shock for him to realize, oh, I'm going to be second fiddle again. But I think it's not second fiddle really. It's just a different role than he probably expected, but that's okay. That will come with experience, with time, and understanding what that role is. And I think it's starting to happen.
Coach, any final thoughts to shut down this part of the conversation?
No, I think you guys covered it. I think that he's got a lot of room to grow, and he's still young. So let's keep going with the assists.
Hey, I do want one last real quick thing about Anunga. The dribble he made, then the assist to Orellano. Because when he kept going, it's like, what's he doing? I mean, it's Anunga. He usually takes the ball and passes it back. So I got to mention that because that was cool.
Yeah. Speaking of we've got to mention Beyond Exercise, our second half show sponsor here. Beyond Exercise is a local physical therapy and fitness business that helps people stay active and injury-free. In fact, they've helped some of our local MLS Next Pro, and FCC Academy players with their health and performance needs. Check out their suite of services at gobeyondexercise.com. So again, go Beyond Exercise. Beyond Exercise, we thank you for your support of the show and of soccer in the Cincinnati area. That brings us to what's rapidly approaching the end of our show, but our Talking Tactics segment here. We've kind of gone long here, Coach, because we haven't had a lot of questions in the chat for you. My question, though, is that just to maybe kick this off is Cincinnati, their pressure, right? We saw it. It seems to be they're going hard early in matches now. They're pressing high, and they're winning the ball in advanced positions on the field and getting on the attack a little bit more frequently. That fell apart against Columbus, right? In the second half, because of one player that recognized something that no one else did and started dribbling through the pressure. But we saw it work against Miami. We reemployed it. What is working about the press in those games, and will we see it against Miami again in this coming week?
It seems to me what Noonan has done with the press is actually adjusted so it's not an attempt to win the ball high up the pitch. What it is an attempt to win the ball higher up the pitch. So what you see is instead of that front three going and pressing and trying to create triggers where you're rushing the ball, what that front three does is packs it in tight, forces the ball to a center back or the goalkeeper, and then kind of squeezes in and says, sure, pass it long. Try to play a 20 or 30-yard ball into a forward or midfielder's feet. And then you have a guy in Matt Miazga back there that is getting so much back to his best that he is able to sit back and quarterback back there and let those outside center backs really get aggressive. So, against Columbus, you see Lucas Engel jumping that pass and picking that ball up. Against RSL, you see time and time again the center backs, Flores and Engel, stepping into midfield and winning those balls. So they're not winning the ball in the offensive third, but they're winning the ball in the attacking part of the middle third instead of in their own half over and over and over. So by dialing down the pressure with that front three, it's kept the lines tighter. The distance between the center backs and the forwards isn't so spread out. Now, what you mentioned about the one player on Columbus is if you're not rushing the ball, and you have space, if you have a guy in Nagby that can receive the ball in that little bit of space and then dribble through that first line of pressure, now all of a sudden those center backs can't get aggressive because they're having to drop off. They're having to worry about Nagby playing the long ball or the through ball because he's got time and space to look up. And that made the difference. Now, does Miami have a guy who can do that? Busquets can make the pass, but can he dribble out of pressure like that? I'm not sure. I'm not even sure that Nagby is good enough to do it, other than he just gave Evander the runaround so often. I think against RSL, when Orishano got moved into that front three, I think Orishano got run around by Justin Glad several times. And that's when you started seeing all of a sudden RSL had a lot more of the ball. It is so key when you're pressing like this that front three doesn't get bypassed, because they need to maintain their shape so that guy, whether it's the goalkeeper, whether it's the center back, is trying to play a ball that's, again, a kind of a tight pass, like a 30 or 40 yard pass into a forward with a defender on his back. Then you let those fantastic center backs do the work to win that ball. As soon as they're dribbling through and looking for passes on the ground into a forward's feet or over the center back's heads into space, the whole thing breaks down. So I like the tactical tweak, but I think guys like Evander and Orishano really have to buy in and stay. We talked about that being mentally attuned to do it. They have to do that a little bit better, especially late in the game.
What do you anticipate heading down to Miami this weekend? Busquets, you talked about a little bit. Messi's a guy that can dribble, pressure, and do that. I think they like to play him a little bit higher up the pitch. But do you think Miami, and we all know last year, right, things didn't go the same way as they did in Cincinnati when Cincinnati went to Miami to play. So obviously something shifted, and there were some players on the field the second game that weren't in the first game. We played a full strength. FC Cincinnati played a full strength, seemingly Miami in Cincinnati. What do you anticipate, any shifts Miami makes this week that maybe they didn't do in the second half of this last game?
Honestly, I don't think that they'll change, because I think they'll think that they'll look at that game in Cincinnati as an aberration, and I think they'll say, we're at home, we can dictate play. Now, if they're smart, what I would do is I would play a similar style, but I would play way more up tempo and not let FC Cincinnati get into that shape. So that might mean a few more long balls. That might mean playing a couple additional runners or an additional runner in midfield instead of that, like the kind of like slow, methodical players that they have in there now in Busquets and Kremaski and those guys. I don't know their personnel well enough to say this is the guy they would put in to do that. But somebody that's willing to stretch the field side to side a little bit more. But the way that you beat FC Cincinnati is breaking that initial line of pressure quickly and then making those center backs turn, and you can play in front of them because they have to defend that long ball in behind. And that's when Messi can be dangerous too, right? When he picks the ball up in space and is running at the back line, as opposed to picking the ball up with defenders right there in front of him, or picking the ball up, 70 yards from goal, like we saw a couple times.
Jose, question for you. We saw, we mentioned it a couple times already tonight, Pavel Buka, the way he's played against Messi in this game. Do we see the same play out of Pavel Buka this week in Miami, or do you think Miami makes some adjustments to keep Messi a little bit separated from him, maybe playing from the wing a little bit more than the middle of the field?
Well, I mean, if you're asking me, should Buka play the same way he played last week?
I'm asking if Miami allows for that, or they make some adjustments.
I think, Mascherano, I mean, I've been looking at his record. Mascherano is an okay coach, by the way, in terms of record. Now, obviously, he didn't have Messi when he was, coach of youth teams and whatnot. I mean, he wasn't a great coach in terms of his record. So he will probably make some adjustment because he was a very smart player. When he was a player, he was very smart in the way you saw him move and even, communicating and leading on the field. So he'll probably make some adjustments there. But I don't think you'll be able to make such a huge adjustment when you have guys like Buka and Anunga in the middle. If they keep playing at the level they've been playing, I don't care what kind of adjustments they'll be able to, at a minimum, slow him down. They might not be able to stop them this time because they will probably make enough adjustments for them to counteract what happened in Cincinnati, even if they see it as an aberration. And they will be at home. And it's going to be very hot, by the way, probably even hotter than here. And they're used to it. But I don't think they'll be able to completely neutralize Buka and Anunga if those two guys keep playing at the level they are. And if Pat is also smart enough to make on-the-game adjustments, which he has done in the last couple of games, by the way. We've harped about that too. Well, why doesn't he make these adjustments during the game? So I think if he starts seeing that Buka or Anunga or both are starting to get overrun by that midfield, I'm hoping now that he is experienced enough to say, okay, I got to make some adjustments here, or we're going to get annihilated here.
Yeah. It would be a good game to see the return of Kevin Denke, the return of Yuya Kubo, even coming off the bench for some energetic minutes at the end of a match. I do think Miami makes some adjustments. They make some shifts. I don't know what those are going to be. I think getting Messi on the ball a little bit more than maybe he was this last time. I don't know what his touches were. I don't know any of that, but he's coming off of games where he scored, was it 5 in a row, 2-goal games? And Cincinnati brought that to an end. I think he's going to be hungry coming out, and I think they're going to make some adjustments to get him more on the ball. So it'll be interesting to see how Cincinnati makes their adjustments in Miami to counter that. So, Coach, any final thoughts on that?
I just think one thing FC Cincinnati has going for them in that regard is that Miami did not rotate as FCC did against RSL. Miami went and thumped New York Red Bulls, but Messi played 90 minutes. Busquets played 85 minutes. Jordi Alba played 85 minutes. The guys they rotated was like the youngster Benjamin Kremeski. Tata or Toto Aviles got rotated out for that match. Like these young guys who probably could do it are the ones that got some time on the bench. So it'll be interesting. This has been a talking point throughout the league. Like how long can Mascherano just keep running these, 35 plus year old guys into the ground? Suarez played 90 minutes in that match. So yeah, I don't know how fresh are these guys. If they looked old in Cincinnati, they didn't get younger and they've just played an additional match in between. So, we'll see.
Yeah, I was glad they got all that scoring out in New York, right? I believe New York scored first, and I thought, is that right?
I think,
man, this game is going to be bad for Miami. And I turned on the final score and went, holy cow, I missed a lot, right? So anyway, well, thanks for joining us for this Talking Tactics segment. Next time, Coach, we'll look for questions from the audience maybe ahead of time and see what we've got going. We've got a lot to look forward to this weekend as Cincinnati travels to Miami for the game we've all been anticipating and talking about for the last 10 minutes here. If you like to support Cincinnati Soccer Talk and making the content like this and all the other content you'll see with Jersey Swap and on our YouTube channel, head over to cincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/support. From there, you're able to sign up for our Patreon page and make a one-time donation or a monthly donation. A $5 donation per month gets you in the Growler Cup, which we're moving into the last round, I believe, of that here shortly for the last third of the season. We appreciate you listening. We appreciate your support. I want to turn it over to my co-hosts here as we move into our final thoughts to wrap up this episode that I think we're hitting about an hour now, because if you remember, we started late because I didn't know what I was doing. Let's bring it back around to that. Coach, final thoughts.
We had this whole thing about going into the stretch of matches, which I thought the really difficult stretch started away at Orlando was when I was looking at the season. And I said this thing like, we're all worried about these 1-goal wins, but I bet we'll be really happy if we stack some 1-goal wins in this stretch, because I was looking at it, from this Miami game coming up to the Orlando game. And I was thinking if FCC come out of that with 7 points, I would be pretty happy. I was thinking beat Chicago, hopefully, win one of the 2 home games against Miami, Columbus, and draw an RSL was what I was hoping. And I was writing the others off, away Orlando, away Miami. But as per usual, FC Cincinnati has exceeded our expectations. We keep going into these matches being like, no chance, we're getting destroyed, and they exceed our expectations. So you know what? They're sitting on 12 points in this stretch of games that I was like, this is the time we're going to know what this team is. And you know what this team is? It's a team that doesn't play 90 minutes of soccer really well, but they find ways to block shots, to disrupt things, to play together and eke out some 1-goal wins like in RSL. And occasionally when they hit, like home against Miami, they can do some special things. Does that mean that they're going to go win silverware? I don't think so, but it means that I'm feeling a lot better about it than when we were sitting pre-Orlando looking at these games and thinking, how is this team going to do now that the schedule's getting really tough?
Yeah. Good thoughts there, Coach. Jose, Final thoughts.
It was great to get these 6 points. I said yes. It was lousy to have the meltdown, and I was at the stadium when that happened. That was frustrating and depressing, but it feels really good to get 6 points out of first Miami, of course, at home, and then an RSL game that this is going to be tough given all the variables involved here. So that feels really good. It feels also really good that the team lifted itself up from a nasty knockout with Columbus. And I said it. I said, I just don't see it because they just are not showing that mental toughness. Well, they showed it. They showed it, and that's good. And they showed it again in RSL. Yeah, it was a little, here and there. What are you doing? What's going on? But again, you rotate these players. They're tired, long flight, all of the things that we talked about. But they came through. They managed to win. They're going into Miami. It's going to be a tough game. I'm not going to say, what the result is going to be. I'm not going to go to forecast. It's going to be a tough game. But if they keep playing the way they're doing now, just that consistent, keeping things simple, communicating, hustling, I think then now this team has a chance to getting some silverware at the end of the year. So yes, I'm more optimistic right now. Can they continue this level of performance? That's going to be the question here in the next few weeks. And I'm not talking Miami low performance, by the way. I've said this before. The human body is incapable of having that level of intensity and focus for prolonged periods of time. But if they can continue playing in the style they are, good possibility of silverware.
Yeah. Yeah, good thoughts there, Jose, as you round out the show here with your final thoughts. I do want to shout Clifford Adams here. One of his comments echoes a little bit of my final thought. Over the negativity, number one in the conference, have a competitive team. We have a defense, persevered through lots of struggle and injury, right? I'm guilty of that, right? As a Cincinnati soccer fan, as a Cincinnati sports fan, if we didn't just win a game where we scored lots of goals or lots of touchdowns or had a lot of home runs, like whatever team you're following, Cincinnati sports fans are quick to forget the good times and we harp on or we dwell on, what happened lately, right? And so we're number one in the league right now. We're in the Supporter Shield race. We're finding little things to get upset about, little things like Corey Baird not putting the ball in off his head, right? With that beautiful cross from Evander's foot. We're finding little things to dwell on. But overall, and you guys have said it both in your final thoughts, this team is finding ways to win, even if it's by a single goal each game. They're finding ways to win, and that's what good teams do. They're not dropping, multi-goal games to many teams at all out there. They're in most games. They've got the best road record in the league right now, which you have to be a top team. So we've got a good team. We know that. We love to get negative at times, but we've got something to celebrate. And I'm looking forward to this weekend in Miami as the best road team in the league faces one of the other best teams in the league, just a few spots behind Cincinnati in the Supporter Shield race. Join us next week on Cincinnati Soccer Talk as we talk about the victory that Cincinnati brings home, another 3 points from Miami. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. We'll talk to you next week.